The fill effect, we talked about this last week. The fill effect lets you just control how fill it is, and the power of it lies in the value curve, which allows you to control how that fill changes over time. And you can see it also cycles through the color, much like, to be honest, the color wash. Again, really useful as a mask more than anything else. You can control its direction as well. Can sometimes be useful as a background or something on an effect as well. That one's relatively new. Then we've got the fire effect. Now the fire effect is the first one that's actually able to respond to music. So I'm going to go and create a new sequence and find some music, something not too horrible. Well, that's always pretty hard with Christmas music. What have we got? Is there anything here that's not too annoying? Oh, Wizardsy Wither, I'm sure you'll all want to hear that again and again. Do some Smooth Criminal. Just a Christmas song and a half. Not. All right, let's go back to our fire effect. I have this horrible feeling that when I turn the volume on, it's going to absolutely blast you. Damn it. Set the volume nice and low. All right, see if that's too loud. Sounds good. Sounds good to me. I hope it didn't blast you. All right, so here's our fire effect. Yeah, Ben?
Yeah, that volume's good.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so our fire effect, you can, of course, control how high the fire is. Start it really low, have it really high. The value curve lets you have it start low, grow hue, and then come back down again. And, of course, you can do a custom curve if you want it to change more often than that. The hue shift lets you change the color. So you don't just have to have stuff that looks like fire. It also has a value curve. So again, you can actually have the value curve change the color of the fire over the course of the effect. You don't get to change the order in which the colors change, right? That's basically preset by the color model that sits behind the color theory. So you can't do anything about that. Growth cycles, this you can see how it's jumping up and down. Well, it's going to jump up and down 10.6 times within the 10 seconds that we've got this effect. So that's what color cycles will do. Let's go back to make it look like fire. You can change where it is. Fire can burn from the roof down, from the right or the left. Fire obviously looks fabulous on a tree. My wife hates fire. She thinks the house looks like it's burning down. But you can also have it grow with the music. So play this. So you can see how the fire is jumping up and down as the beat in the music occurs. It's actually a pretty good song for showing that. So yeah, so this is the first of the effects that we've come across as we've gone across that can actually understand what's happening to the song at a particular point in time and automatically react, which could make your sequence look a lot more coordinated with the music without you having to go in and spend hours and hours trying to find every note and every beat and sequence things. So that's the fire effect. We're about a quarter of the way through. It's so weird not having to stop every now and then, Ben.
Much better.
We've been going almost an hour. People bored yet?
No, they're blowing away so far.
All right. Fireworks. Yeah, we'll blow you away. I briefly showed this last week. So fireworks just randomly displays fireworks. Of course, you can decide just how many there are. So if you want lots of them, you pump it right up. I don't know why this screen doesn't have the text boxes showing what your setting is, but it doesn't. It's just the nature of things. Particles in the explosion. So when an explosion does go off, it basically controls how big each explosion is. So set to 1, it doesn't even look like an explosion at all. As you move it up, right, you get more and more dots getting displayed when it happens. The other thing I should highlight with number of explosions is number of explosions actually sets the number of explosions that occur within the time interval. So if you stretch the time interval out, the explosions will slow down significantly because there's a lot more time over which to spread them out. And velocity of particles controls just how quickly those explosions disintegrate. So they look like they're much more powerful explosions when you ramp it up, and when you ramp it down, it goes back to normal. And then, of course, you get to fire them with music. So we'll go back to that song. Okay, and the way that works is you've got a trigger level here. So if you can imagine, we'll zoom in a little bit here. If you can imagine between the midpoint here, which is effectively the 0 point, and the top, this slider here is saying when the music gets above that level, I want you to trigger a firework. So if you, and then if it stays above that level for a significant period of time, it will actually fire another firework. In this case here, with this sort of song, setting it a little bit higher might provide a slightly more. So you see that each firework seems to go off with the significant beats or notes in the song, which can once again make your sequence look like much more coordinated with the music than you can actually achieve manually. You could not achieve that manually; it just would be impossible. Okay, I can show you. Yeah, so if you set that trigger level really low, what it'll look like is you'll get just a steady firing of the fireworks, but because effectively the threshold is continually being hit, they don't look like they're actually firing with the music. So typically you want to get it up nice and high so that you get those pulses and you get the fireworks going off. Okay, so fireworks. Okay, so next one's Galaxy. Galaxy is another one of those superstar controls. So once again, lots and lots of settings. I'm going to screw this up. I apologize. X and Y, just like the fan, you can move around whereabouts on the display the Galaxy is. Up, down, left, right. The radius. So I should have checked where the radius was. So here we have a start and an end radius. So I've got it starting at 29 and it's ending at 10. So instead of going from the middle out, it's now going from the out in, and through the course of the effect, it goes through the colors that we've chosen up here. So if I just wanted this to be red, I just choose red, and now the whole effect stays red. The width controls how wide each bar is. And the angle just changes whereabouts it starts. So you can see here it's starting at the top. Here it's starting slightly past the bottom. So that controls where you start from. And you can set all the ends as well. So the end radius lets you decide. So we've set it a lot bigger. So now it's spiraling out again. We set it really small. It will spiral in again. This will go right into the middle. And again, you get to set the width. So I can set the end width really large, and so it starts small and grows bigger as it enters towards the center. And revolutions controls just how often it happens. Or the number of times it spins around as it does that transition into the center. Some options, the head duration. Somehow I think I need to get us back to some sensible settings. 29. Get the width. The width's throwing me. Okay. So the head duration. So you can see I've selected red and green, and because I've set the head duration really high, sorry, the revolution's back down. So this head duration controls how much of it's red versus how much of it's green. So this is all red. So you can see, once again, it's changing that proportion or length. Acceleration changes whether it starts slow and gets faster as it moves in towards the center. Reverse, of course, would change the direction. So now it's anti-clockwise instead of clockwise. Blend edges. Doesn't seem to make a hell of a lot of difference. I have no idea what the difference is with blend edges. I'm not sure what inward does either. Read Jared's manual, see what those do. Sorry. Okay, garlands. So garlands really, really effective on trees. So this gives you the concept of something falling down and filling up the tree. Again, it does the transition between the two colors. If you want it to all be one color, just select the one color. The garland type, you get garlands of different shapes. They don't have to be just flat bars of color. You get sort of a whole variety of different styles of garlands falling down the tree. The spacing is really controls how many of those falling bars you see. If you set it nice and big, it almost looks like they're falling down one at a time. And cycles controls the number of times it happens within the time interval. You get to control the stack direction, left, right, up, then down. Not sure that down makes a hell of a lot of sense, but it's there. And then there's value curves on some of these things, which can, once again, cycles. This will make it look like it's accelerating, and spacing will also, to a degree, make it look like things are falling faster or not. So you can play with those as well. So yeah, quite common on the tree. I use this in wizards on my house. I fill the house all the way up from the bottom to the top. It actually is one of those models that actually looks really good when applied to the whole house model. Rendering order is killing me. So you can see how it looks like it's filling up the whole set of effects. This is actually slightly screwed up because I didn't actually make sure. Let's see. Oh, sorry, let's set that on 20,000. Right, So you can see how it's filling up my entire display. So that's that one. Glediator. All right. Glediator. Glediator lets you basically add, actually we won't do it there. Go put it on the matrix. So Glediator lets you take a Glediator file, which I actually do have, because I use them in my show. Okay, so here's a Glediator. All right, so there's a Glediator effect. That effect doesn't actually look like that. I'm applying this to a much larger matrix than the Glediator effect was originally designed for. But what it's doing is I've saved it as a Glediator file, and then I'm basically playing it on my matrix for that 10-second period. It's not actually 10 seconds long, which is why it goes black. If I pull it in, it'll look better. So for those of you who have ever played with Glediator, I think it's like solder.de. It's one of those websites I'll show you next week. It's a free tool. It's actually a little Java app. It can generate a whole bunch of different effects. You can save those effects. I've saved several of them into individual Glediator files. And then you can just load them in. See? That's interesting as well. So they've gone and expanded it, but I can't see it. Oh, sorry. What else have I got here? There's another one I like. That looks shocking. I normally run that on a much smaller thing. That doesn't look great there either. This is one of these things where with Glediator, you really need to actually match the matrix or the size of the matrix you use in Glediator with the element that you're going to place it on, because this actually looks a lot better than that on in my display, because it's actually tuned to my matrix, which is like 19 high by 50 wide. But because I'm throwing it onto a 100 by 50, it looks very strange. So if I was to go in and, oh, damn it. Where'd they go? I guess it doesn't matter. So if I was to go in and make this 19, this 50, and go back to the sequencer, click on it, this is what it actually looks like when it's on my matrix. So you can see how getting the Glediator matrix size to match the element that you're putting it on here is really important if you want it to look right. I'll go back and change this. 50, 100. I don't need to save it. Okay, but now it looks crazy again. So that's Glediator. Life, I would love to know if anyone uses this. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I guess it provides. So for those of you that remember the game of life, which is a sort of computer program that follows certain rules around which things get lit up, this is basically doing that. It generates a somewhat random looking pattern. You can introduce more colors, which makes it look a little bit better. These parameters down here, right at this end, it looks almost like white noise for a while at least. So, it can provide an interesting background. The type, I'm not sure what the type does. Maybe it's how it looks almost like the pattern of cells that it introduces. I'm not sure. And the speed is how quickly it runs through the generations of the life effect. Look, it can provide some interesting things. It does have a tendency to get stuck in certain patterns. So I doubt there are that many people that use this that often. Lightning. Lightning's really cool for those people doing Halloween type shows. Obviously, lightning's not red. It's generally white. Down here, you can control just how many segments there are. So at that point, it looks more like a bolt of electricity, you know, in a substation or something, sort of arcing. This end, it looks more like a lightning. The width of the bolt lets you control sort of how wide it goes, versus at this end, it's a straight line, not much like lightning at all. Forked lightning, you can see that it's hard to see there. At this end, you can see there are some forks in the lightning up the top here where you end up with these disconnected pieces. The top X location lets you basically move it around left to right. To me, the lightning looks like it's coming from the bottom. I don't know why that is, but of course you can always come to the transformation and flip it vertically, and now to me it looks more like it's coming from the top. We'll put it back because I'll forget to change it. Top Y location, I have no idea why you'd want to do that, but you can move it up and down. And X movement lets you cause it to move to the side. To be honest, I wouldn't use that at all anymore, because you can now use a value curve on the movement. So you can start it there, move it across, and move it back again if you so wanted to. It would probably make more sense to not move it quite as far. And so now it's just going to move a little bit around the middle, left and right, which probably looks a little bit more realistic, I guess. Oh, did we touch the width? We didn't touch. Oh, we did touch the width of the bolt. So these things all have value curves, so you can cause them to change over time, start straight and get more crazy, etc. Like I said, most people I think would generally put 2 or 3 of these on. So you'd have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 of them in different layers, and I guess at the right point with a loud cymbal crash in a song, it could be quite cool, I guess, to have a lightning strike. Okay, Marquee, good for tune-to signs, particularly P10 panels, because it lets you do things like, we need some colors, put a border around things. This makes absolutely no sense on a whole of house model. Here it is on a whole house model. Makes no sense at all. Even a tree, it's going to look a little weird. But on a matrix, it's perfect. The band size lets you decide just how big those colored bands are. Right, so they can get quite large.
As well, Keith?
Sorry?
That work on Windows?
Yeah, it should do. But to be honest, Windows, I mean, you can get a bars effect just as easily on a Windows because it's just a like 4 strings, and I'd probably stick with bars. The Marquee is really designed for a matrix to put a border around it, so you can have your tune-to sign or something and something interesting to draw attention to it. So the band size controls how large those color bands are. The skip size lets you introduce black in between those color bands. The thickness lets you make it thicker. It gets a little bit crazy, but you know, sometimes you need to make it a little bolder, so thickness can help. Stagger, I think stagger has to do with thickness. Yes, it does. So you can get something that looks a little bit more like it's diagonals if you get it to the right level. Speed obviously changes how fast it goes around the matrix. And start position, I'm not sure why you'd want to use that, but it obviously slightly offsets where it starts, and reverse changes the direction. So pretty simple. It can generate some interesting things on a 360 tree. You can get some interesting effects with this. Like I say, I've got a 2D tree here, and it doesn't do much at all. Kind of looks a little boring. On a 3D tree, because part of it's behind it and part of it's in front, it can sometimes generate an interesting effect that looks almost impossible to generate any other way. So that's Marquee. We're halfway through yet? We're not. Meteors. Okay. So one of my favourite parts of my show is when this comes down across my entire house model. It looks very cool. So here we have rainbow range where it seems to be taking the first two colours and sort of fading, selecting them. It doesn't seem to want a third colour. I can't see any green or yellow. And then you've got the palette where it does take each of the ones here that you selected and use them. You can obviously change whether it's up or down, etc. This is also where you get implode and explode, and icicles. Obviously, it's doing a similar thing, but you're not getting the fade, and although they do seem to drop out, so that's slightly interesting. And icicles with a background. Okay, I don't know. Maybe on a set of icicles that would actually be quite interesting. Let's grab an icicles model and see. Okay. So, add our icicles. Well, it was underwhelming, wasn't it?
Slightly, yes.
You know what? I actually think it's a rendering problem. Sorry, I'm just rendering all. Because of the way I've been moving effects around, there's been a lot of crap left behind. So now I'm rendering all. Did you know that you can click down here and you can actually see where it's up to on each model? Lets you see which models are taking the time. So if it seems stuck, it can give you an idea of what's going on. All right, I'll finish in a second. Okay, well that made absolutely no difference at all. I have no idea why. Let's go back to our matrix. All right, I want to actually do explode. And we'll make them white. Oh, which means you need to use a palette. Okay, count obviously changes the number of things that are happening. Trail length controls how long those the streaks are, so quite short, and you get things that almost just look like particles exploding. As you get it out, it looks more like star trails or something. Swirl intensity controls, you can see. Can you see? I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure swirl intensity applies here, but I think if we were to go to down, yeah, you can see how they're moving sideways, left and right. Well, that's that swirl intensity. It's set to 0, they just fall vertically. The speed controls how fast they fall. And so then you've got offsets. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for this one. So let's go back to our explode. So if you don't want it to explode from the center, you can move it across to the left and have it come out of the right-hand side. You want to have it come from the bottom corner. You can do that as well. And that works with both explode and implode. You can move those around. Okay. So then you can adjust the count based on the music intensity. So another one of these music sensitive controls. not as easy to see as the fireworks were, but basically as the music intensity grows, you get more of the meteors flying out. This one actually looks a little bit better, I think, in the down. But yeah, so as the beats occurred, as you look across, you get more of them coming out. So slightly different way of looking at things. If you go back to Explode again, there's also a star field simulation. Okay, well, we'll count a little bit. So this is meant to be more like, you're traveling, like Star Trek, where you're traveling through space, so they get brighter and travel a little bit faster as they get towards the edge. Our trail lengths are probably a little bit long. And our speed's probably not high enough. You imagine it looks like Star Trek going through warp speed or something. So that's the Meteors effect. So there's a whole bunch of really very different effects in there. Then we come to Morph. Morph's a really important effect because it's very powerful on things like archers and spinners and the like. But we'll start with it on the matrix, and we'll move it from left to right. Where do we do that? So this is one of these ones where it's really clever because he has somewhere in here. Oh, no, he doesn't. I thought he had a set of presets. Obviously he doesn't. Okay. So yeah, you get ahead of the effect, which we'll see in just a second when it restarts, which is this white piece that starts off the effect, and then it basically cycles through the rest of my colors, which are red and green. So it goes through red, through yellow to green, and then to black as it fades away. That's what a morph fundamentally looks like. But then you've got a bunch of control settings around where it starts and where it ends up and how long the head is and so forth. Oh, here it is. Here's the quick set options. So a full sweep right, flips it round and basically readjusts all the settings for that. Single sweep left. Okay, so here's set a single sweep left where it's just done one row of my matrix versus a full sweep left, which does the whole matrix. All of these settings here, and you'll have to play a little bit with them, but you can see as I move this slider, this here is changing, and you can actually play with these things up here to get different effects out of the morph. On a matrix, you can see this sort of thing. Once you get it onto something like a, grab that properly. There we go. Once you get it onto a spinner, you can get some very different sort of settings based on where you put these things. And as I said, once you get to, where's my morph gone? On things like arches, you can see, it really does the fill-in type effect quite well. And if you combine it together, hang on, do a repeat count. And you stagger it and get some quite interesting effects across things like arches and the like with the morph. I tend to think that the morph is best on these single line type things, but it's not exclusive, right? You can use Morph on lots of different things. Gil's the expert. He wrote it. Just trying to think if there's anything else. I have no idea what link points does. I don't even really understand how this changes. So you can see how that seems to have only slightly done each arch. So one of these things that's worth playing with. Thank God this one does have the quick set options, which lets you reset it, which is quite powerful. When you're doing arches with something like this, the render style can be quite powerful in terms of changing the way. So you can see that as a single line. Now I have to shorten it. Where'd it go? So now it's not working at all. Oh. What have I done wrong? Hope it was on the right tab. Delete, start again. The Morph does seem to reset itself when you drop it. He thought, but apparently not. What have I done wrong? Stagger. It should be 0. There we go. That's what I got wrong. So you can see how this started with each one, and each one showed it at the same time. When you go back to single line, you can see that it bounces across all of the arches, so it treats it all as a single model to go through. And per preview, again, has got that variability of speed because of the way it works. So Morph's quite powerful for things like arches, and quite powerful for things like spinners as well. Spinner. It produces a somewhat interesting effect. Okay, so we'll move on. Any questions? You can type them, I'll read them. Any questions on any of the effects that we've gone through up until this point? One new message. Yes. Oh, absolutely, playing around with the effects. Like I say, playing around with them, particularly on a matrix so you can see what it's doing, is a great way to start. And then experimenting it with it on your model. One of the things you'll get in the new release is there's a new setting up here where you can say backup on save. And so every time you save your sequence, it will automatically back it up for you. So you will be able to go back to any previous version without having to worry about, did I remember to back it up? And it will just continually create. So every time I save, I haven't given it a name, and I go into that folder, right, it will create a backup here. And so I can always go back in time and recover a file from one that I tried in the past. F10 still exists. You can still press F10 and back it up. There's also, but when you set that to backup on save, it basically does an automatic F10 every time you save. There's also a new alternate backup location. So when you press F11, you can set a location like your Dropbox folder or maybe a memory stick and save your backup to somewhere which is, different than you would normally be working. Provide you with that additional assurance in case your PC crashes. but that's never automatic. You have to remember to press that. Have fun with it, guys. Like I say, create yourself a new sequence. You can't do any damage. I remember last year when I used it for the first time, my first sequence I must have redeveloped from scratch 3 or 4 times as I learnt my way around the various controls.